My people, I did not come here to shout or accuse anyone. I came to speak the truth we all see every day, but have been taught to keep silent about.
When Ibrahim Traoré spoke, he did not raise his voice. He did not insult anyone. He did not reject culture, art, or tradition. Yet the room fell silent. Why? Because he said something millions of Africans had felt for years but were never brave enough to say out loud. He pointed out a simple but uncomfortable truth. Money always appears for culture, but disappears when Africa wants to build power through science. Foreign embassies proudly sponsor festivals, fashion shows, music events, and art exhibitions. Cameras arrive, media arrives, applause follows, everything looks colorful and progressive. But when universities ask for laboratories, when students ask for research equipment, when scientists ask for support to study diseases, crops, or energy, the same sponsors suddenly fall silent. This was not an attack on culture. Culture matters. It shapes identity, it tells stories, but Traoré's message was about imbalance. A continent cannot survive on applause alone. A people cannot eat awards. A nation cannot protect its future with songs and stages, while its laboratories remain empty. What made his words powerful was not anger, but clarity. He did not accuse anyone directly. He simply asked a question that exposed the system. Why is Africa encouraged to shine on stage but struggle in classrooms? Why is visibility rewarded more than capability? That moment was not just a speech, it was an exposure. Once such a truth is spoken clearly, it cannot be unheard. The silence that followed was not disagreement, it was recognition. The world loves a performing Africa, a colorful Africa, a smiling Africa, a dancing Africa. This version feels safe, it entertains, it inspires, it does not challenge power. But an Africa that researches, invents, and builds technology is different. That Africa asks questions, that Africa competes, that Africa no longer depends. This is why funding often flows toward what makes Africa look brilliant, but not powerful. Culture creates admiration, but science creates independence. Entertainment creates attention, but research creates leverage, and leverage changes global balance. Many African universities still lack basic laboratories. Equipment is outdated, research projects are delayed or cancelled. Students with talent and ambition slowly lose hope. Meanwhile, cultural events grow bigger every year, with more sponsors and more media coverage. This contrast sends a quiet message to young people. Being seen matters more than building something real. No one says this message openly. It is never written in policy documents, but it is felt. Over time, it shapes dreams. Children start believing that success comes from visibility, not knowledge, from popularity, not problem solving. This is why Traoré's words felt uncomfortable. He did not reject culture. He challenged its use as a distraction. A society can be admired and still be dependent. It can be celebrated and still be controlled. True respect comes when a nation produces knowledge, not just performances. And that kind of Africa is not dangerous because it is violent, but because it is independent. In many African countries, the brightest lights are not in laboratories. They are on stages. Music plays loudly. Cameras flash. Speeches praise creativity and diversity. Everything looks alive. But a few kilometers away, universities sit quietly. No applause, no cameras, just students trying to build something with broken tools and borrowed parts. This silence is not accidental. Research does not entertain. It does not produce instant results. It does not look impressive in photos, but it is the foundation of progress. Without research, countries export raw materials and import finished products at high prices. Without science, nations depend on others for medicine, food, and technology. Many young scientists leave Africa not because they want to, but because staying means giving up their dreams. They are not chasing luxury, they are chasing opportunity. A system that does not support learning pushes its best minds away. Meanwhile, cultural events continue to receive praise and funding. No one calls this injustice, they call it priority. But priorities shape futures. When labs are ignored and stages are celebrated, society learns what is valued. Traoré highlighted this contradiction calmly, but firmly. He reminded people that no nation has ever developed by clapping alone. Development happens in quiet rooms, through experiments, failures, and patience. The problem is what we neglect while celebrating it. Knowledge has always been power. Whoever controls what you study, what you research, and what you learn controls your future. This truth has not changed. Only the methods have changed. In the past, people were controlled by force. Today, control often comes through distraction. When learning is lonely and unrewarded, and entertainment is everywhere, people naturally choose what feels easier. No one bans education. It is simply pushed aside. Young people are not weak or lazy. The system around them is designed to keep them reacting, not thinking. Algorithms reward drama, trends, and controversy. Serious knowledge is buried. Over time, attention becomes fragmented. Dreams become smaller. Traore warned that this is a new form of colonialism, not land-based but mind-based. A society kept busy consuming content has little time to question how the world really works. Phones can be powerful tools. They can also be cagey. The difference lies in how they are used. A generation trained only to seek attention will always depend on someone else's platform. A generation trained to create value will build its own future. This is why his message matters. It is not about rejecting the world. It is about standing upright in it. When African scientists and engineers leave their countries, people often call it betrayal. But this idea is unfair and incomplete. Most of these young minds did not dream of leaving home. They wanted to solve problems where they were born. They wanted to fix water systems, improve farming, fight diseases, and build technology for their own people. But dreams need support, not just passion. In many African universities, research stops not because ideas end, but because money ends. Equipment is missing, grants are rare, mentors are exhausted, projects are shelved. Over time, hope slowly fades. When an opportunity appears abroad, leaving becomes less about ambition and more about survival. This is not a personal failure, it is a systemic one. A system that celebrates concerts but ignores laboratories, pushes its brightest minds away. When a society does not value research, researchers will find places that do. The tragedy is not that Africans succeed abroad. The tragedy is that their success is needed at home. Every engineer who leaves takes knowledge with them. Every scientist who leaves takes solutions with them. The cost is invisible but enormous. Ibrahim Traoré understands this deeply. That is why his message is not emotional, it is practical. If Africa wants its minds to stay, it must build systems that respect learning. Pride alone cannot keep talent, opportunity does. A nation does not lose people because they lack love for home. It loses them when it fails to give them a future. Young people are always listening, even when no one is speaking. They observe what is rewarded and what is ignored. When musicians are celebrated but scientists are invisible, a message is sent. When influencers are praised but engineers struggle, another message is sent. That message is simple. Attention matters more than contribution. This is not taught in classrooms. It is taught by society itself. Over time, dreams shift. Young people begin to chase visibility instead of value. Fame starts to look like success. Patience starts to look like failure. No one tells them not to study, but studying becomes lonely. Research becomes invisible. Meanwhile, entertainment is everywhere, loud and rewarding. Likes come faster than knowledge. Applause comes quicker than progress. This is not the fault of the youth. They are responding rationally to incentives around them. Every society shapes its future by what it celebrates. Traoré's warning is clear. If a generation grows up believing success comes from being seen rather than building something useful, the nation will struggle to stand on its own feet. A society full of stars can still lack foundations. Youth need role models who build, not just perform. They need systems that reward thinking, not just reacting. Otherwise, talent will be misdirected, not lost. In the past, power was maintained by force. Today, power is often maintained by distraction. No chains, no censorship, just endless content. People scroll for hours. They react, argue, laugh, and move on. At the end of the day, nothing is built. Time is gone. Energy is gone. Questions are postponed. This is not accidental. Platforms are designed to keep attention, not to strengthen minds. Short, emotional content spreads faster than deep thinking. Over time, this reshapes habits. Thinking feels heavy. Reacting feels easy. Traoré calls this a new form of colonialism. Not control of land, but control of attention. When people are busy reacting, they have no time to question. When they are entertained constantly, they stop asking why things are the way they are. This kind of control is dangerous because it feels harmless. It feels like fun, but slowly it erodes the ability to think independently. The phone can be the greatest library ever created, or it can be a cage. The difference lies in intention. A distracted society is easy to guide. An informed society is difficult to manipulate. Traore does not place all blame outside Africa. He turns the mirror inward. He asks difficult questions that many leaders avoid. Why is it easier to approve budgets for events than for laboratories? Why do leaders rush to cut ribbons at stadiums but delay funding for research? Why do leaders rush to cut ribbons at stadiums but delay funding for research centers? Why does image come before capacity? The answers are uncomfortable. Stadiums create applause. Labs create silence. Events bring quick praise. Research brings slow results. But real development is slow by nature. When governments choose image over substance, they shape dependence. External funding fills the gaps, and external funding always comes with conditions. Traore's message is simple but bold. A poor nation cannot afford glamour before competence. Real pride comes from independence, not applause. This is not about isolation. It is about balance. Cooperate with the world, but stand on your own feet. Learn from others, but build your own systems. A nation that invests in knowledge invests in freedom. In many countries, development is measured by how things look, not by how things work. A new stadium looks impressive, a big festival feels exciting, a cultural event creates photos, speeches and applause, but none of these things solve long-term problems on their own. Laboratories do not look impressive, research centers do not attract crowds, scientists do not trend on social media, yet every strong nation is built quietly inside these spaces. Roads, medicine, agriculture, energy and technology all begin there. The problem is not that Africa invests in culture. The problem is that culture is often used as proof of progress, while real capacity is ignored. This creates an illusion of development. Everything looks alive, but the foundation is weak. When image comes first, dependence follows. Countries continue importing medicine they could produce. They buy technology they could build. They export raw materials and import finished goods at higher prices. This cycle does not exist because Africa lacks intelligence. It exists because priorities are misplaced. When leaders prefer visibility over capability, the future is postponed. Real progress does not always shine. Sometimes it works quietly, behind closed doors over many years. Nations that understand this eventually lead, those that don't remain admired but dependent. Before a nation becomes independent economically, it must become independent mentally. How people think determines what they build. What they value determines what they fund. If a society believes success comes from applause, it will chase attention. If it believes success comes from knowledge, it will chase solutions. The difference changes everything. Ibrahim Traoré constantly brings the conversation back to mindset, not anger, not blame, awareness. He reminds people that no one can control a nation that thinks for itself. When people begin asking why they import what they could produce, something shifts. When young people ask why scientists are invisible, something changes. These questions are the beginning of freedom. Mental independence does not reject the world. It engages it intelligently. It learns, adapts, and builds without losing control. No country was ever permanently weak by destiny. Weakness is learned, and so is strength. Truth often makes people uncomfortable, not because it is false, but because it removes excuses. Traoré's message does exactly that. Once it is clear that distraction replaces development, silence becomes complicity. Once it is clear that priorities shape dependence, inaction becomes a choice. Those who benefit from the current system prefer things to stay as they are. A dependent Africa is predictable. An independent Africa is not. That is why voices calling for research, innovation and self-reliance are often labeled unrealistic. History shows this pattern clearly. Those who challenge comfort are always criticized first. But comfort does not build nations. Sacrifice does. Patience does. Long-term thinking does. Traoré does not promise easy success. He promises responsibility. And responsibility is heavy. It demands discipline. It demands focus. It demands saying no to shortcuts. That is why the message feels dangerous. Not because it is extreme, but because it is honest. The most powerful revolutions do not begin in the streets. They begin in the mind. When people stop accepting distraction as normal, change becomes inevitable. This is the quiet revolution Traoré is pointing toward. A shift from consuming to creating, from reacting to thinking, from performing to building. Every choice matters. Every hour spent learning instead of scrolling matters. Every student who chooses research over visibility matters. There will be no parade, But slowly laboratories will matter more than stages. Engineers will matter as much as entertainers.